What's up, Leron here, and today we're reviewing Lamp Black by Winsor Newton, Cotman. What's up, Leron here, thank you for joining me in another episode of The Paint Show, and today I'm reviewing Winsor Newton Cotman series Lamp Black, and this is a continuation from the last episode of The Paint Show when we reviewed Cadmium Yellow Hue. This is another Cotmans. Cotman is a student grade series, okay, so it's not necessarily the best watercolor paints you'll find out there. However, they do have several gems, and this is the first brand I started working with in terms of tubes. Okay, I started with the Van Gogh paints, then I moved on to the Cotmans as tubes, and I think they're just a good choice for beginners if you want to start diving into the world of tubes. I think this is a good place to start. Lamp Black is one of the very first watercolor paints I ever purchased, so I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and let's begin with some color information. Okay, so I thought I'd give you a better look at the tube, and then we can talk a bit more about the paint information. So here we go, the Winsor Newton Cotman Watercolor Lamp Black, Series 1. This is a small 8 milliliter tube. It's 0.27 US O's. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but we use that measurement as well here in Israel. So this one goes for 16.5 shekels, which is Israeli shekels, which is just divided by 3.5 to get the USD. So again, rather cheap, which is great for this one. Now I'm going to talk a bit about some other things here. The pigment is Pigment Black 6, okay, PBK 6, which is Lamp Black. And hopefully I'm just going to set this aside and I'm going to overlay here some of the information. So Pigment Black 6 Lamp Black, it's made of lamp burnt petroleum gas or wax. I didn't really dive deeper on that, but if you don't want like bone char or if you want a more vegan paint, I guess this would be a better choice. Now, in terms of Lightfastness and Permanence, they give two ratings. One is the Lightfastness, which is ASTM tested, so they give this one a 1, so that's the best. It means it's permanent. Now, what they write as a note is that it's permanent in full strength and may fade in thin washes, okay? But it's still the highest there is, so that's good. Now, their internal permanence rating says AA, which is extremely permanent. Now, I think this is a good opportunity to talk a bit more about that. I don't usually talk about Lightfastness and things like this, so I don't dive deeper into that and elaborate. So the ASTM is the American Society for Testing in Materials, and they rank or rate different materials such as paints, among others. And what they do is their testing is that they reduce the color's reflectness, I believe, to 40%, and then they reduce the color to a 40% reflectness by adding titanium white to the paint, and then what they do is test it out in daylight conditions and in extreme accelerated light conditions to test out if it changes or if it stays the same. Okay, so that's the type of experiment that they're doing. So this one in the ASTM is I, that's 1. Sorry, just 1, not I. And the Permanence, the internal ranking is AA, which is why, again, I think this is a good choice for beginners because it is permanent and it is cheap and it is good. It has a wide range of values. It's Series 1, so it's cheap in that regard as well. So just a very good choice. It is opaque, okay, but if you're not planning on mixing it too much, then it shouldn't bother you too much, the fact that it's opaque. And it is non-granulating as far as I know, okay? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to set things up and we will take a look at this, see what it looks like, try to do a variated wash, do some wet and wet, some dry brush, and we'll just realize what it looks like so that you can make a decision if you want to purchase this one, which I think is a very good one. Okay, so I put just a bit of the Lamp Black here on my palette, and it squeezed out the tube really nicely, and it didn't spill out too much, and it didn't separate, even though I haven't used it for a long time, so that's a good thing, seeing that it's preserved well in the palette. And by the way, I got this thing here, the surface which hopefully does a better job as providing a background for what I'm doing. Let me know what you think about that. And what I want to do is start demoing and showing to you what it looks like. We're going to start by doing a gradated wash from left to right. Let me zoom in a bit, and I'm going to show you the variety of values that can be achieved with this one. Hopefully we'll get a good we'll do a good job here. So first I'm really watering down the paint here, and you can see it's very strong. It seems very strong. So and I also don't want to go with too wet of a brush, so I'm dabbing some of that on just a piece of tissue that I've got here. And let's start and see what this looks like. So this is a very very light version of that, okay? And I'm gonna just pick up a little more paint here. As I go along, I'm just adding a bit. Let me show you once again. I'm just taking this puddle and adding a bit more of the black to that, okay? And making it a little more concentrated, I guess. A little more concentrated with the actual paint. Now I don't really want to pick up a lot of water now because it's already pretty wet here. So I'll just try and keep this relatively dry from now on. So you can see here already it starts to pick up, but don't forget that because this is wet, it's gonna dry much lighter. So I'm adding more and more of the paint, and I'm ending up with a very thick paint on the right here, and I'm trying to do it even thicker than I think I would need, just because a lot of this paint is simply gonna, you know, disappear, evaporate with the water. It's not gonna be as dark, okay? Hopefully that gives you an idea of how dark this one can get. There's a bit of a sheen here, but if I move it aside, this is what it looks like, and you can see this. Now we're going to do some wet in wet, so I'm just going to pre-wet the surface, and I'll try and clean the brush as best as I can, and we're just going to pre-wet some of this area right here, and I'm just going to start dabbing some paint in there. And we'll see the flow, and again, the flow has to do a lot with the quality of paper, and also the paint itself and the brush, and well, not as much the brush, but more of the quality of the paper and how wet the surface is, so you know, you may get some different results than that. I'm just gonna use some very thick paint here in the corner. This one's gonna take some time to dry for sure. And yeah, this is it. I'm gonna do some dry brushing here. I'm trying to work with a different light, so apologies if the light isn't as good as always. It's not natural light right now. I'm testing it out, and next episode I'm going to correct it if it's not showing up well. So here's some dry brush, getting the very little texture that there is to this page, so you can see it here. And next I thought it would be nice to wrap this up with kind of a quick demo. I don't really want to show mixes here because I don't mix, I don't plan on mixing this, and generally speaking I don't even use the color black, only for studies, which is exactly what I recommend you use this one for. So what we're going to do now is just do a bit of that, okay? I'm going to do a very quick study here, just based on a very simple reference, and I'm going to try and get things to be accurate and varied in the right level. So it's just a very simple kind of apple study here. I'm just filling in the areas as I see them. Where I see dark, I place some dark paint. Where I see it lightens up a bit, I add a bit of water and try to do that. And again, sorry for the sheen. It's because I'm using that light from the top. Hopefully you can still see the results. Maybe if I'm gonna do it like this, maybe I'll add a bit of an angle so you can better see this hopefully now. So I'm just adding a bit of, here it lightens up quite a bit, so I want to get it to be a little lighter. And here it darkens back again, and this is actually one of the darkest areas, so I want to make sure that this entire area here is very dark. And I'm just playing around with the paint. There's a bit of a reflected shadow at the bottom, so I need to clean out most of the brush and kind of allow this area to become a little lighter here, around here as well. And here it goes back and becomes a little darker once again. The reference isn't really that important as well, it's just an kind of boring regular apple. Here we become a little darker right next to this area, around the area of the stem, and here we go a little darker yet again, like this, Just a gap here, bit of an edge there. Now the stem itself is very dark, so I'm gonna add a bit of darkness to that. And from here we can just lighten up a little and grab some paint for the leaf, which is darker but not as dark. Maybe a bit darker near the top here, just to hint at some movement. There's a bit of a thingy here. And I'm gonna darken up the bottommost area with a cast shadow, just at the bottom, and we'll connect it a bit here. And just very fun. You see this this kind of a study is just a lot of fun for me. It's very freeing and loosening up, and I did all of this using the black, and you can see a variety of values. I think I could lift in some areas and I could blend some edges, but I will keep this one fairly simple. I could blend this edge a bit, see here. I could maybe lift some paint off of this area here, a bit of this area here. There's a highlight on the right that I want to lift up just a bit like this. Maybe again we're gonna do another one like so. And this is pretty much it. Maybe we could also, you know, the more I do, the more I'm like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. We could add just a very light paint here, just to really make the white pop. You know, you sometimes need the mid values to make the highlights pop a bit. And I think this is it. This is a good kind of way of showing this. A very quick monochromatic study using lamp black, and you can really see how this was done and why this paint is really good for these kinds of studies. So hopefully that gives you a better idea. And now we can move on and wrap up this episode. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learning more about this paint. And I think, again, this one in particular is just a very good one to practice, because I think one of the best ways to start practicing with watercolor painting, especially if this is the first color medium you're working on and if you just came from the world of sketching and drawing, is black. This is one of the first paints to start with. One of the best ways to start with is monochromatic studies, to actually do a study of a scene or a painting or photo or whatever it is using monochromatic painting, meaning just one color. And what better color is there to do this than black? It has a huge variety of values. It's just a good choice for working in a simple manner. A lot of people like to work with sepia or burnt umber, kind of the other dark browns and blacks and colors like that. These are also helpful, and black is just a good choice to get there. And this one, again, has a good range of values. You can achieve very dark values with it, very light, so it's just everything you need to get started with tubes. And I highly recommend, by the way, starting monochromatically. I did a lot of monochromatic studies when I just got started. Okay, so this is it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Paint Show. Don't forget to check down the links below if you want to listen to my podcast, or if you want to learn more about what I do. My Patreon page, my website is there, my beginner's drawing course, anything at all that you want to learn more about, check it out in the description box below. Let me know if you want me to cover any additional paints. Let me know what you thought of this one in general in a comment down below. I'm really curious for your feedback. As always, I'm trying to improve more and more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in another episode and in another vid real soon.